Hey, so yesterday I said I would do a post on shouting and give my own views, and I'll try and be as quick as I can. And it was inspired by experiences that I've had with my own children and with the children that I teach, and also by this article in The Guardian that was released not long ago. Um, Actually, sorry, that's a lie. 10th of January 2019. It's a big lie. And it's the title is By Mollycoddling Our Children, We're Fueling Mental Illness in Teenagers. It's a really interesting article. I will put the link in my group so that you can have a read yourself. And I've done lots of highlighting. The reason I am talking about this is because on Instagram, on all these apps, I see so many like parenting tips on um, how not to shout at your children, become a non-shouty mum, become a non-shouty parent. And I was seeing this on my feed constantly, and I thought to myself, right, what do I actually think about that? And as a consultant, an educational consultant, and as a mother of three children, I thought carefully about this. And you know what? I'm a little bit fed up with everyone telling me that I shouldn't shout at my children. Um, the before I That's my personal opinion that shouting and losing it sometimes is a perfectly normal and within reason acceptable human reaction to stresses and frustration. But the article, and this the reason this article was so helpful was because it actually kind of backed up what my thinking was. And at the moment, well, certainly in 2019, when this article was written, there is an epidemic going on in American universities where they can't hire therapists fast enough to deal with the onslaught of mental health. Nassim Taleb, who wrote the book Anti-Fragile and actually coined the phrase, it's a new phrase, anti-fragile, um, he describes this as basically look at any system, banking system, the immune system, without sporadic stressors, then you can't actually develop you can't take an immature system to a fully mature system that knows how to deal and cope with the complexity of adult life. Um, and he does go on to say that, a child, of course, needs to have a safe environment with and that prolonged exposure to permanently stressful situations and parenting can actually permanently alter the brain development, which is true. We know that when a child is consistently in a stressful situation, whether it's issues going on at home or at school, it can cause very big problems and cause reactivity throughout their life, whether that's dopamine enhancers or whatever. I won't go into that. But he does say that although prolonged exposure to stress is extremely harmful, brief periods of normal stress is not harmful. And in fact, he goes on to say that they're essential. So now, look, the statistics are quite harrowing. And, so you've got what you call iGen or Gen Z, the children born after 1994, and they are suffering from higher rates of anxiety disorders and depression compared to millennials and compared to oldies like me who are born and bred in the 80s. In the UK, suicide rates are up in girls by 46% and in boys by 17%. And those statistics were from 2017, so I can only imagine they're worse now. And I watched a snippet on Gary Vee, and it was very short, it was only like 13 seconds long. Someone went up to Gary Vee and said, how do I prepare and protect my child, my daughter, from the exposure and extreme potential harm of social media and the internet access? And he actually said, you can't. The only thing you can do is build her self-esteem up to such an extent that she recognizes red flags and knows what's good for her, knows what's good for her long-term mental stability, health, and thrivement. I'm making a word up now. You need to make them so super confident in their own moral belief system, in themselves and knowing what's good and bad for them, that they naturally reject whatever they're seeing. So, whether it's the now he does go on to say that females and girls are more prone to the stresses of chronic social use because of the physical appearance, comparisons, awareness of being left out, relational aggression, all of that. So girls, for some reason, are more susceptible to that. But also, the article confirms that the girls' use of social media is far higher than boys' use of social media. So Gary Vee said that you can't protect her from that. All you can do is build her up to such a degree that she knows she can naturally and easily reject what's not good for her, which made sense. Um, Okay, it goes on to saying, the article goes on to saying, but when a 7-year-old jumps up and down with excitement and pride because they're allowed to go and run an errand on their own to the local shop or whatever, personally, I think 7 years old is a bit too young. And we do have risks out there. So I think seven, but I do understand what you're saying, that we have to give children that independence. But that's not why I'm going through the article. Um, when a mother or a father shouts at their child, there's a lot of parent shaming going on and a lot of mum guilting going on. Mums are really, the mums certainly that I come across, and I've been in teaching now for a good, coming up to 20 years. um it's not, it's to get attention, it's out of frustration, it's out of them feeling emotionally, not being emotionally recognized, because they're asking for certain things, and normally these things are quite simple: put your clothes away, pick up after yourself, don't do that, it's dangerous, don't stick your finger in the socket, when you go out, make sure you look before you cross the road. Mums and dads are tired running the household. When children are capable of picking up their phones, they're perfectly capable of picking up their clothes, making sure their homework's handed in on time, etc. So for me, you have to allow parents to also have moments of humanness. Parents also need to be able to share their frustrations. And so this brings me to my perspective, and I've gone on for like 7 minutes now, but shouting is a human reaction. It's yes, there is always a better way to communicate. And even if it's screaming at the top of your voice, it can be viewed as a mistake. But as a family, to pull the family together, you have to have moments where people mess up, so that you can talk about forgiveness, letting things go, building resilience, and understanding that that person is not going to leave you. They're your person, but you're perhaps not giving them a helping hand, or encouraging a situation where they feel frustrated to the point where they have to shout. Now, I'm not victim shaming either, but in the midst of a family, when you're organizing and running a family, people will get frustrated with one another. And yes, there is a better way to communicate. Shouting wouldn't be the first thing, or shouldn't be the first thing you go to. But when you do go to it, and especially if you've given multiple chances, then by all means don't be made to feel guilty. Because when you read articles like this about mollycoddling our children, shouting, especially if it's sporadic and not common, is what I would label as a brief stressor, which is what he indicated. And people get shouted at work, people get shouted at in the street, and people get shouted at in school. The school corridor, especially in secondary school, is horrific. So there has to be an element of teaching our children to recognize, well, hang on a minute, you've overstepped the mark, and I need to report this, and I need to, or someone just shouting at them in school and being rude, and yeah, report it, but then you got to get over it. You can't let that dampen your life and not have a good day at school, because it's so easy to get children to focus on the negative things that happen rather than the positive. So my message is, if you're a shouty mum or a shouty dad, or like, keep an eye on the frequency, but don't feel guilty when you lose it with your children. And I don't mean beating or anything like that. That is a big no-no. I'm talking about shouting and showing that you're human, and then calming down later, forgiving yourself that you've done it, and actually having a conversation when things have calmed down and said, look, this is why I shouted. I didn't mean to shout, but you're also pushing me, and I have to do X, Y, and Z, and you have to do X, Y, and Z. And if those things marry up, then there is no need to shout. There is no need to drive me to the point of frustration.